This is Generations. Kevin Swanson with you. And today we want to come back to the subject of science, the purpose of science, what is real science versus fake science, and glorifying God in science. That's the subject of my new book on science coming out soon. The world has already perverted science. And here's the point. Evolution is dead. It's over. The evolutionary explanation for origins is done. Put a fork in it. It's over. It was an interesting discussion for 150 long, painful years, but the degree to which one must surrender rationality and embrace insanity in order to accept the Darwinian hypothesis has increased by orders of magnitude. We're quickly approaching the end of the road for Darwin's far-fetched hypothesis. The hypothesis was preposterous, unbelievable, irrational to begin with. But the irrationality of it has only become more pronounced with every decade of scientific inquiry and consideration. The exploration of the other planets and asteroids in this solar system has been done. The fossil record has been sufficiently sampled and has been found wanting. The 50-year experiment on 82,500 generations of E. coli bacteria is over. That's equivalent to 3.3 million years of human evolution. The complexities of the genome and the functions of the living cell are common knowledge now. So now the degree to which one must surrender rationality and embrace insanity in order to accept the Darwinian hypothesis has increased by orders of magnitude. Here's the conundrum when it comes to the DNA, the RNA, and the living cell. To use a common analogy with which we are all familiar today, the computer, requires hardware and software, which is the programming, both designed by humans with intelligence, by the way. The computer cannot function without both. The software instructions by which the machine operates cannot exist without a computer. And a computer is useless as a rock without software. So how does dirt write software for dirt? How do atoms write computer programs? Dirt and atoms are unintelligent. That much we know. There exists no scientific law. There's no scientific observation of some physical process that anybody knows of where dirt and atoms come up with information where no information previously existed. Information also assumes order, not some random motion of materials in a chance universe. Information is not material or physical, and therefore cannot be examined or explained by science and scientists. How does physical dirt produce non-material information? See, this makes no intuitive sense to anybody. Well, that's the problem, of course, with the DNA. There's a problem of interdependency as well. See, DNA contains the instructions for building the cell's proteins, but DNA cannot read itself. The cell needs special protein machines to read and copy the instructions stored by the DNA. Now, if the DNA is the master instruction book for the cell, the RNA polymerase is a molecular machine that reads part of the DNA and makes an RNA copy of its instructions. But how does the RNA polymerase know where to begin? Special sections of the DNA together with other proteins help direct RNA polymerase to the right starting place. The polymerase moves along the DNA template, adding matching RNA letters one at a time until it reaches a stopping signal. This copy, called the mRNA, carries the instructions for making a particular protein. The ribosome then reads the mRNA instructions and joins amino acids together in the correct order to build the protein. The finished protein can then go to work, doing one of the many jobs needed to keep the cell functioning. But now, here's the difficulty for evolutionists. The instructions for building those protein machines that read the DNA are themselves written in the DNA. So the cell needs protein machines to read the DNA, but it also needs the DNA instructions to build those protein machines that will read the DNA. The cell also needs energy to do this work. Much of the usable energy comes in the form of ATP, which is produced in an extremely tiny molecular machine called the ATP synthase. But the ATP synthase is also made of proteins whose instructions are encoded in the DNA. Those instructions must be read by the cellular machinery, and the machinery itself requires energy, including the ATP. Here's the point. All these parts and functions must appear at the same time, or there can be no life. Life is built into the cell, and here are the building blocks of cells. Amino acids build proteins. Proteins help build and operate cells. Cells build tissues. Tissues build organs, and organs make up the living body, like me. A single human cell contains thousands of different kinds of molecular machines and millions, sometimes billions of individual working molecules, all interacting in an organized system to keep the cell alive. There are 10 to 15,000 different proteins that may present and work in particular cell type. Millions of protein molecules are operating simultaneously: enzymes, pumps, motors, receptors, structural proteins, and DNA-reading proteins. Several million ribosomes can exist in a single very active human or animal cells. It's huge. It's bigger than a city. It's like a Denver. And yet there's 30 trillion of these Denvers in your body, like right now. And by the way, there's 1 million of them being formed and made in any given second. So we've already had, 2, 5, 10 million cities built into your body in just the last 10 seconds. The cell's ribosome is the manufacturing center, producing tens of thousands of different kinds of proteins for the trillions of cells in the body. Together, these proteins form much of the machinery and structure needed to keep the body's cells alive and working. There are millions of RNA molecules, including mRNA, tRNA, rRNA, active at any given time in a single cell. And let's keep in mind, 30 to 40 trillion of these cells in your body right now and every other human body on earth. O Lord, how manifold are your works. In wisdom you have made them all. The earth is full of your possessions. This great and wide sea in which are innumerable teeming things, living things, both small and great. That's Psalm 104. It's hard to describe the awesomeness, the complexity, the activity going on in one cell. We're really on our face right now, overcome by God's creativity, His wisdom, His power in putting all of this together. Protein development is like a construction site where millions of tiny microscopic molecules are busy communicating information and doing their jobs as if they all knew what to do. Here's how a protein is developed. The building blocks of life, all right? Human cells use 20 standard amino acids to build their proteins. These same 20 amino acids are used throughout the body. Ribosomes arrange them in different sequences, sometimes hundreds or thousands of amino acids long, to make the enormous variety of human proteins. Think of them like a 20-letter alphabet. The cell can arrange these 20 letters in countless different sequences to make thousands of different proteins. Amino acids come from food digested by the body. Food proteins are broken apart into amino acids. Enzymes from the stomach and pancreas are busy breaking down the proteins into the 20 varieties of amino acids. These are carried through the blood and distributed to the cells throughout the body. The supply of amino acids float around the cytoplasm of the cell. Now, here's how the cell manufactures new proteins. The building blocks of the cell and the building blocks of life. Step 1. Here we go. The gene of a particular DNA contains the instructions for making a particular protein. Step 2. The mRNA makes a working copy off of the DNA. The RNA polymerase reads the gene and produces an mRNA copy of its instructions. Step 3. The mRNA travels to the ribosome. The ribosome attaches to mRNA and begins reading its instructions 3 letters at a time. Each 3-letter is called a codon. Step 4, each codon calls for a particular amino acid. For example, the codon AUG tells the ribosome to use the amino acid methionine and normally marks where the protein building begins. Step 5, the tRNA molecule's job is to deliver the amino acid from the cell cytoplasm. A clerk-type enzyme called the aminosyl tRNA synthase fills the order. This enzyme attaches the correct amino acid to the correct tRNA. There are 20 of these clerks running around the cytoplasm, 1 clerk assigned to each of the 20 amino acids. Each tRNA is like a tiny delivery truck. One end carries a particular amino acid. The other end has an anticodon that matches the codon on the mRNA. The anticodon marks the type of amino acid carried on the opposite end of the little tRNA truck. Step 6, the ribosome empties the truck and connects the amino acid one at a time. When the correct tRNA arrives, the ribosome joins the amino acid to the growing chain. The ribosome then moves to the next codon and waits for the next truck or the tRNA to arrive, delivering the next amino acid. Step 7, this process repeats again and again until the stop codon ends the instructions. When the ribosome reaches a stop signal, it releases the completed chain of amino acids. Step 8, the chain finally folds into a protein. Now, we're talking about a single protein here. The newly made chain folds into a particular 3-dimensional shape and may undergo further processing before becoming a working protein. The system, as you can tell, is extremely complex. I hope you understand every step that I gave to you just now. Every protein building step must be worked out according to the instructions, and the microscopic operators work together much like little robots on a manufacturing floor. Robots can only function because they are created by intelligent men and operate according to instructions, computer instructions encoded by human minds. The human cell is more complex than that. It takes place at a microscopic level and maintains quadrillions of operations within every human body on the planet. The tRNA adapter molecules are actually very carefully designed to hold the amino acid in just the right position so the ribosome can collect it. The opposite end of the tRNA also has to bond with the codon, the mRNA. The carefully shaped design of the tRNA is an important component if these functions are going to happen. Also, the tRNA synthase are little clerks that load up the tRNA. They're extremely accurate in their work. They have to be. Any mistake made by these little clerks could spell death for the cell and for the organism. Hence, the error rate allowed for by the creator for these little clerks is only 1 in 40,000. Each clerk will sift the amino acid twice, rejecting the ones which are too big and then rejecting the smaller ones as well. Now, let's pause for a moment to reflect on the wisdom and goodness of God. God is awesome in all his works. Oh, give thanks to the Lord. Call upon his name. Make known his deeds among the people. Sing to him. Sing psalms to him. Talk of all his wondrous works. Amen. The inner workings of this mystery of physical life has been studied and described to some significant degree, thanks to high-powered microscopes and decades of research. Scientists have observed the components of the cell and their functions. The basic unit of life is a system that demonstrates a staggering amount of complexity as compared with the non-life forms that you can study in the universe. The science of life truly involves a quantum leap in complexity and a whole other division of human knowledge altogether. Planets revolve around other celestial objects by the laws of physics. Radioactive atoms exhibit law-governed physical behavior, but living cells are far more complex, requiring a tremendous amount of research and brain power just to understand how they work. They contain information-bearing sequences that are interpreted by molecular machinery to accomplish specific biological functions. A rock rolling downhill is subject to the physical laws God has hardwired into the universe. The rock doesn't read instructions, okay? The cell, though, is alive. In its components, they participate in coordinated information-driven processes. They communicate signals. They recognize molecular patterns. They regulate activity, respond to changing conditions, process encoded instructions, and assemble specific products. Now, let's talk about the DNA repair program for a moment. If you're not completely overwhelmed and you're not on the ground before God, prostrate, worshiping, take just a moment and consider this. There are quite a few other problems for evolutionists, but the DNA, the cell's blueprint molecule for building life, is unstable. Without a repair system, the DNA is quickly damaged. Thankfully, God placed an extremely complex repair machinery and proofreading mechanisms in order to suppress random genetic variations. Without this repair system in place at the outset, the DNA would never survive. As it is, DNA would completely disintegrate at 22,000 years. RNA, cytosine, and proteins are even more unstable. This means that even if a component or two were to appear by some miracle of chance somewhere in the universe, these molecules would quickly disintegrate before the other components showed up by another miracle. Recently, evolutionists were quite surprised and disappointed, in fact, to find a dinosaur bone with intact DNA. As already mentioned, there are millions of activities going on in every living cell all the time. Any city has at least thousands of activities going on as every person in the city goes about their business on any given day. Cars, motorcycles, elevators, heavy equipment, automated doors, fans, and many other mechanical things are all moving all at the same time. Some energy sources must power these movements, or everything would come to a screeching halt. Now, let's talk about processing packs of energy for every cell in the body. Some energy source has to keep the millions of activities going on in 246 trillion cells in every human body on the planet, not to mention the 1 nonillion bacterial cells and all the other cells in plants and animals on Earth. So how does that happen? Well, little energy packs called ATP are distributed throughout the cells for this purpose. Every cell has millions of little motors. Each cell has millions of little motors that produce these energy packs for the life operations of the cell. The ATP synthase motor may be the most impressive mechanical part of the human cell. As with every protein assembly in the cell, this little machine is put together by the DNA. The machine is made of pieces of protein, and it's manufactured precisely according to the instruction conveyed by the RNA, as we just talked about. A single human body may contain hundreds of quadrillions to perhaps a quintillion amount of these ATP synthase motors working throughout its 30 trillion cells. Plants and animals use these remarkable molecular machines as well. Scientists can study individual ATP synthase molecules working at the microscopic level. The ATP synthase is one of the smallest known rotary molecular motors and is remarkably efficient. God designed it that way. Hydrogen ions flow through the ATP synthase, somewhat like water flowing through a turbine. Their movement turns part of the ATP synthase motor, which under some conditions can rotate up to 10,000 rotations per minute. Incredible. That rotation provides the mechanical force needed to join the ADP with the phosphate group, producing an ATP. The ADP and phosphate are already present and continually recycled inside the cell. Ultimately, the cell obtains the materials and energy it needs from the nutrients. The newly formed ATP is released from the motor as a tiny packet of usable chemical energy. Cells use ATP to power thousands of activities, including muscle contraction, protein production, movement of substances across the cell membranes, and nerve cell activity. This leaves us with a question, all right? Where did this technology come from to design these micromotors? A quintillion of them in your body. Well, where does that technology come from? How does the system develop all at once, particularly when one process is dependent on the other process? These little ATP synthase motors makes the ATP, but the cell needs ATP and protein-making machinery to construct and maintain ATP synthase itself. This symbiosis means that there can be no ATP synthase motors without ATP. There can be no ATP without ATP synthase motors. These had to appear simultaneously, only possible by a supernatural and all-wise creative act of God, obviously. But now ask the beasts. Ask the beasts, and they will teach you. The birds of the air, they'll tell you. Or speak to the earth, it'll teach you. The fish of the sea will explain it to you. Who among all these does not know that the hand of the Lord has done this? In whose hand is the life of every living thing and the breath of all mankind. That's Job 12, 7, 11. Check it out. All right. So mathematically, evolution of life is absolutely impossible. Given the vast increase in knowledge modern science has achieved concerning the cell, the complexity of advanced creatures, the absence of transitional forms in the fossil record, the absence of helpful mutations, the impossibility of evolution has increased a millionfold since the hypothesis was first suggested 150 years ago. The mathematical impossibility of the evolution of life, it's a coup de grace. It's a coup de grace to the entire theory. How the first amino acid molecules come about originally is one question, but there are a number of other insurmountable problems for developing the first protein out of the amino acid. First, there are only 20 amino acids out of 300 that are of any use for creating life. Also, as God laid it out, originally, each amino acid molecule appears in either a right-handed or left-handed form. Only left-handed amino acids can produce proteins for life. Also, each amino acid must bond in that correct order to create a functional protein. But also, any bonding would require a specific kind of energy like that of ATP already discussed. How is this specific energy produced for the development of the first protein? Also, proteins need the protection of a cell membrane to survive. How is the first cell membrane created before the first protein is produced? Another catch-22. Now, the mathematical odds of getting 100 heads in a row when flipping a coin is such that it would take a person 1 quadrillion years to get it, assuming he can flip coins at 300 million times a second, which I can only do like 1 a second, so I'm not even there. The evolutionary theory of the universe requiring the whole thing to get done in 14 billion years, not 1 quadrillion years. A simple protein requires 100 left-handed amino acids. We're talking about one protein requires 100 left-handed amino acids bonded together. And the odds for that to happen would be somewhat similar. But this still doesn't make a protein for life because all 100 proteins must be arranged according to the right pattern or in the right order. The odds of getting all the 100 proteins in the right order is 1 in 10 to the 130th power. That's 1 followed by 130 zeros. The chances of producing the first living cell are far less, more like 1 in 10 to the 50,000th power. That's 1 followed by 50,000 zeros. Now, okay, so I wanted to know, is there enough interactions and actions in the universe over 14 billion years to actually get to that point? Well, there are only so many actions going on in the universe at the atomic level at one time. Given that there are an estimated of 10 to the 80th atoms in the universe, and there are an estimated 10 to the 12th possible atomic interactions every second, and 14 billion years, or 10 to the 18th seconds, since the beginning of the universe by the evolutionary theory, that would only allow for 10 to the 110th total possible interactions at the atomic or molecular level. That's not nearly enough time for the development of life, given the above odds. So, there's no wonder Sir Fred Hoyle, the most prominent of the British astronomers, astrophysicists, and evolutionists of the 20th century, finally recanted his atheism at the end of his life. Hoyle commented on the gross improbability of the evolutionary theory. Here's what he said. The likelihood of the spontaneous formation of life from inanimate matter is 1 to the number with 40,000 knots after it. It's big enough to bury Darwin and the whole theory of evolution. Okay, the dying words of a guy who actually wanted to tell the truth at the end. My listener is encouraged not to abandon all common sense at this point. The whole idea that non-life could produce life by a mechanism yet to be defined, and the cause and effect action has never been repeated and observed in a laboratory, is nothing that even resembles science. Frogs turning into princes and rocks turning into frogs, it's the stuff of fairy tales. So what profit is the image that his maker could carve it? The molded image, a teacher of lies, that the maker of its mold should trust in it to make mute idols? Woe to him who says to wood, awake! To silent stone, arise, it shall teach! Behold, it is overlaid with gold and silver, yet in it there is no breath at all. But the Lord is in his holy temple. Let all the earth keep silence before him. Habakkuk 2, 18-20. What then should we say to this? How must we respond to this kind of knowledge? What is the rational and proper response when encountering the genius beyond genius demonstrated in the construction of the human cell? Discovering the inner workings of God's most profound work in the physical creation cannot but inspire in each of us the deepest awe. The appropriate position? Prostration. Prostration on the floor, face to the floor, something the arrogant scientists will never do. But the rest of us will confess God's awesomeness in a moment of holy silence. No human can make a single cell. Man's not intelligent enough for it. He's not skilled enough nor powerful enough to design or create this life. Man can hardly understand it. After more than a century of studying cells, scientists still do not possess a complete map of how a human cell works. The closer scientists look, the more layers of organization and interaction they discover. The Human Cell Atlas project began in 2016 with the goal of creating comprehensive maps of all human cell types and states. The project involves an enormous amount of scientific collaboration from around the world, and so far the project has only mapped 71 million human cells into 18 biological networks, including those cells making up vital systems such as lungs, the heart, the intestines, the immune system, and the nervous system. The first draft is yet to be completed, folks. The millions of components in each cell are intricately designed. The millions of processes going on in the cell are carefully ordered, implemented, coordinated at a microscopic level. We have no tools to build something so complex and detailed in the space of 1/10 the width of a human hair. There's no way the human could ever create anything even close to what the human life or the human cell looks like. The discovery of such divine wisdom as this, that so far exceeds anything man has ever done, calls for humility and worship. Psalm 139:14, I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and that my soul knows very well. Folks, this comes from my new book, Fake Science and Real Science in the Fear of God. Soon to be released, science has been destroyed by this bad religion called atheism, evolutionism, materialism, and anti-supernaturalism. 83% of Americans believe in God, but only 33% of scientists, 29% of astronomers, 30% of geologists, and 32% of biologists. Today, Bill Jack joins me as we discuss the efforts on the part of evolution to destroy science and the Christian faith, as well as human rationality. And Bill Jack in studio with me from Worldview Academy. Thank you, Bill, for joining us. Sadly, the scientific field has been used and abused like a kamikaze pilot. You remember the kamikaze pilots that would take their plane and ram it into an aircraft carrier? Science has been used like a kamikaze airplane to just ram into the Christian faith. And I think that's the first goal of modern science, was to destroy the Christian faith. First, science has been infiltrated and seriously damaged by this bad religion called atheism, evolutionism, materialism, and anti-supernaturalism. But as it attempts to ram itself into the aircraft carrier, what happens to the plane itself? What happens to the kamikaze plane? The answer is it destroys science as well. So science itself has slowly but surely been destroyed. And this is the point I'm making in my new book on fake science versus real science and the fear of God, is it turns out 83% of Americans believe in God today. This is the most recent survey. 83% of Americans believe in God. Only 33% of scientists, 29% of astronomers, 30% of geologists, and 32% of biologists would confess the same faith. And that's discreetly different. That's a falling off the cliff. That's obviously science has done its very worst to be sure that each successive generation of scientists do not believe in God. So does that surprise you at all? It's not only have they destroyed science itself, but they're working hard to destroy the faith.
Well, I'm going to take your analogy of the kamikaze pilot and the plane a little bit differently, and that is that the plane was not intended to be used in that purpose.
Well, it never was.
But in desperation,
you're right.
In desperation, they began to use it that way.
And their desperation was due to
a lack of resources and losing the war.
And you think therefore evolutionists were losing the war?
And I'm saying that science has not been destroyed. Mm-hmm. They're using a pseudo-science. Mm-hmm. The kamikaze pilot was a pseudo pilot. He just guided a bomb.
Yeah, but let me ask you this. I mean, do you think that's possible that given that approximately 70% of scientists no longer believe in God, is it possible that these scientists have ruined science for themselves?
They have ruined science, but here's the question. Themselves. Do we do science by majority opinion? No, we do not do science by majority opinion.
Yeah, we've learned that before.
That is the way they do it. For example, phrenology is a pseudoscience that involved the measurement of bumps on one's skull to determine mental and predict mental traits and intelligence. Mm-hmm. Okay, it was in vogue for years. Okay,
you're talking back in the 1800s,
they would measure the bumps on your head to determine whether you were intelligent or not.
When was this?
Oh, it was back in the 1800s, all the way up into the 1900s, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. But 18th and 19th centuries.
So it went on for a while.
It was popularized by Franz Gall. Now, it was purported to be science. Even in Wikipedia, it is proclaimed to be a pseudoscience. That's exactly what evolution is. It is not science. It never has been science, never will be science. It is a philosophy at best of science. It is a model. A model is an attempt to explain reality, like a model train or a model home or a fashion model. It's an attempt to depict and explain reality. Both creation and the model of evolution are merely that, models. They're outside the scope of science. And yet, those who hate God have brought this pseudoscience into the cockpit. And as you pointed out, it is not only deep-sixing and blowing up culture, it is blowing up the very tool that they say they believe in, which is science itself. Mm-hmm. So it is a pseudoscience. Mm-hmm. Phrenology has been discredited. It is mocked today, and yet there were serious, very intelligent, very highly advanced, degreed people who believed in phrenology.
You're right. Yeah, it was popular. I'm just seeing this on Wikipedia. Yes. It was very popular in the 1830s, 1840s, highly sought after.
Right.
Wow. So, and it probably continued on for a good 100 years or so.
There are people who still hold to those certain traits and characteristics which divide people groups. That's how we get this idea of the races. It doesn't come from a creationist perspective. It comes from an evolutionary perspective. We did a camp years ago at the Ohio State University, and we took a tour, took the group students through the Anthropology Museum. And then you walk in the foyer, in each corner of the room, there were the 4 different races depicted in sculpture, the heads. And they had been shaved off because it was an embarrassment to the anthropology department, because they realized that that was a racist perspective that was popularized by Darwin in his book, Origin of the Species, the subtitle of which reads in part, "For the Preservation of the Favored Races." Now, I'm not saying that all evolutionists are racist. That would be absurd. But evolution by nature is racist, and it has been used to validate that perspective. It is a pseudoscience based on a lie, and yet the lie persists. Now, even though Darwinism has been called into question, that's just not the only type of evolution that there is. There are at least 5, maybe 7 different types of evolution, different theories of evolution. There are, for example, Lamarckianism, which preceded Darwinism. Lamarckism was the idea by Jean-Baptiste Lamarck that you acquire different traits, you inherit different traits based on environmental pressures. The giraffe got his long neck simply because during the time of a drought, he stretched his neck, further, and the giraffe with the long neck survived. Those who didn't have the long neck, they died out. They passed that characteristic on, and that's what the way giraffe got his long neck, which was patently absurd. And it was replaced by Darwinism, which is natural selection, the theory of that the survival of the fittest. And then there was, neo-Darwinism, okay? And after that, there's punctuated equilibrium. Ooh, that sounds good, doesn't it? It's the idea that there's been this period of stasis, and it's punctuated by rapid evolutionary change. Now, by rapid, they mean thousands of years, or
which in itself is not a mechanism. It's just it's something that they think may have happened.
May have happened. It used to be called the hopeful monster theory. Hopeful monster theory went like this: that a reptile laid an egg and out popped a bird. Okay.
Yeah. It's hopeful monster.
It's hopeful monster. They just changed the name to make it sound more scientific, such as punctuated equilibrium, and that was popularized by one of the leading Harvard evolutionists of the day, Stephen Jay Gould and Niles Eldredge, both of those. And now we've got the nuclear theory of molecular evolution, which was back in the 1960s, late 1960s, and that was put forward by Motu Kimura. And he pointed out that the most evolutionary changes at the molecular level are not caused by natural selection, but by a genetic shift of neutral mutations, because you cannot name a beneficial mutation. Evolution depends upon mutations, but you can't name one that has been shown to be beneficial. And so he said it's a bunch of neutral mutations. Now,
they're all guesses. They're wild
fight
guesswork.
Like cats and dogs, but they put up this unified front. So Darwinianism, which is basically taught in the schools, is the most popular, and it's the one that everybody's aware of. But evolution is not going to go away. They're not going to give it up. It's not going to die, and the reason it's not going to die is the same reason that the public schools, for example, are not going to die, because the state is invested in indoctrinating, not educating. And science does not care about the facts. They care about their story. I saw an interview with the head of the Smithsonian, and he, at the time, said that the reason that we're losing this battle in science and why so many people still believe in creation is because they have a better story. Creationists have a better story. And he's right, because truth trumps fairy tales.
Well, I also think evidence proving the opposite position. Inevitably, the argument for evolution becomes increasingly irrational as you view the evidence. We've gone 150 years. That's quite a long time. Where we are not seeing the transitional forms. We pretty much investigated every planet and enough of the asteroids and comets in this solar system. And by the way, it'll take us another 50,000 years to get into another solar system, so it'll be a little while. And we have attempted 85,000 iterations or generations of E. coli bacteria in a laboratory since the early 1970s. We have way more knowledge of the genome and the intricacies and the amazing impossibility of creating a cell by all kinds of mathematical analyses. Just no way. Now, we didn't have that 150 years ago. We have it now.
Kevin,
but now it's irrational.
Don't confuse me with the facts.
Oh, I know, but I'm saying
do not confuse me with the facts because it's about the story, not about the evidence.
I understand, but the point is, if you maintain this, you are increasingly insane. You're increasingly irrational.
Well, is that not what sin is?
Well, yes,
sin is the ultimate insanity.
Exactly. And God gives them up to a perverted and depraved mind. In Romans 1. And this is, of course, what yields homosexuality and transgenderism. So I think what's happening is that this, that they're believing against all evidences that their theory is still workable. But you go, each additional decade holding on for dear life to these propositions, and you are increasing the amount of irrationality and insanity in your own mind. And God gives them up increasingly to this insanity. And I think that's what's going on right now. A 2024 survey, a 2024 survey of college biology professors, and again, college biology professors, by and large, believe in evolution. They're some of the most liberal of all the scientific professors. So a 2024 survey of college biology professors found 95.3% agree that gender occurs on a spectrum of a mosaic, or 92% agree that gender is socially constructed, meaning they're transgenderists. And the world has become an insane asylum. We've talked about this a lot. The inmates are running it pretty much, and that's what these professors are, the inmates. They are inmates. This is craziness. This is insanity. We should all agree this is insanity, at least those who are still sane. But no wonder the transgenderism. No wonder the transspeciesism. No wonder species dysphoria. You know what species dysphoria is? Sure. Is the idea that some people are increasingly wanting to portray themselves as cats or dogs or some kind of animal. They're trying to species themselves into some other sort of animal. This is precisely what these biology instructors are thinking. This is the direction they're going.
Dr. Morell.
This is the insanity that biology professors have embraced. Now, they didn't embrace that level of insanity in 1920. But they certainly have embraced that level of insanity now, to the tune that 92% to 95% have been given up to a depraved mind and have embraced this LGBTQ sort of ideology. So my point is this, is as we go on, the insanity and irrationality of believing in evolution against all evidence is only increasing.
Yes.
And so I think we're going to have to give them up to this.
What we have to do is we have to push them to be consistent with what they say they believe, have to drive them to the logical conclusion of their argument, and let reality crush false worldviews. So here we go.
$100 bill. It's a $100 bill.
Yeah. Kevin, you pretty good at math?
Mm-hmm. $100 bucks. I'm good with this kind of math.
Can you multiply that by 1?
Mm-hmm.
What is
bucks.
it? Very good. I knew I picked the right person. Mm-hmm. Multiply it by 5.
$500.
$500. Just now $500, my money.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
I will offer $500 to anyone in our listening audience who can set up a public debate in a state school, a public school, open to the public. Okay. And I will debate any evolutionist. And I'm a bonehead English teacher. I slept through my science classes. Mm-hmm. And the topic must be, he must agree to the topic, and the topic is, the model of evolution has provided greater benefit for mankind or society than has the model of creation. Okay, I will offer a $500 reward to anyone who can set up that debate in a public school open to the public, and it must be a committed, not a pretending to be, committed evolutionist, and that is the topic.
Okay.
$500.
That's a done deal. $500.
And we
Anybody
get
wants
to
set that up?
videotape.
Okay,
and
great.
we'll provide a copy of the videotape to my opponent. He can do it, use it however he wants. But again, the topic must be agreed to. The debate topic is the model of evolution has provided greater benefit for society or mankind than has the model of creation.
Yeah, it's a great topic. And has the model evolution provided a benefit to the field of science, which is what the subject of this discussion has been on this edition of Generations, my friends. I hope this has been helpful to you. We're just a fair distance down the track towards an irrationality. And it's time now for anybody out there to give up on this far-fetched hypothesis. I don't call it a theory. I call it a hypothesis.
It's a model.
It's a wild guess or even a model called evolution, or an evolutionary explanation for origins. And that's the subject of my upcoming book as well, and $500 to the person who can set up that debate. This is Kevin Swanson and Bill Jack inviting you back again next time as we continue to lay down a vision for the next generation.